Hi all, I'm just sharing my screen to get ready. We might get started pretty soon. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Great.
Yes.
I'll mute people if they unmute themselves, just because you can ask a question if you want to, but otherwise so that we can't hear your background noises. And we might get started. Jason Howarth is here. He's the Associate Head of the School of Computing and Maths. Hi, Jason.
Hey, Chantel. Hi, everyone. Good evening.
And welcome to 2018-30's Orientation Induction webinar.
Thanks, Chantel. I can kick off now. So thank you very much for that introduction. Welcome, everyone. Hi. You can see me in the screen. That's me with the long flowing hair and the headphones and hopefully the tidy office. So great to see you here tonight. Welcome to our Charles Sturt University IT Masters course induction. As Chantel said, I'm the Associate Head of School Computing and Maths. And tonight we're going to take a little bit of a tour through CSU Online, make you aware of the facilities and the services available to you, hopefully answer some questions. And Chantel's going to come on a little bit later and talk about academic writing and referencing and hopefully give you a few study tips. So it's a really informative evening. So let's kick off. So the agenda tonight, I'll go through this pretty briefly because we're going to cover it all. Don't like to repeat myself. Give you a welcome to Charles Sturt University. I want to tell you a little bit about Charles Sturt, just so you know the institution that you're studying at. Talk a little bit about the CSU ITM courses. It's important that you are in one of the right courses and that you're not here by mistake. And then we're going to get sort of into the meat of the presentation where we're looking at things such as the CSU handbook, which is a really important resource as you study your course, and also the learning management system that we have, which is where a lot of the action will take place in terms of your subjects. So that's called Interact 2. Each of the subjects that you study will be hosted inside Interact 2. There are also a number of other subsidiary sites like the IT Masters course site, which is really useful. I'll give you a rundown of that. Also a student portal, which is a kind of one-stop shop for all the services and facilities available to you as an online student at CSU. And then I'm going to exit stage left and Chantel's going to come on and talk about some really great hints about studying, particularly for those of you who may not have studied for a while. So tips about academic writing and assessments and referencing, really important stuff. Great to get off on the right foot. And we'll also have a chat afterwards for those who want to hang about. So hopefully we'll be able to answer your questions tonight. For those questions we can't answer, we'll take on notice and we'll get back to you ASAP. So let's talk a little bit about CSU, just in overview. So, I mean, you're studying as an online student, but we're not an online campus as such. We have lots of very big campus locations. We're situated as a general rule through regional New South Wales, but there are exceptions. So we have campuses in a lot of the larger regional centres of New South Wales. We have one at Albury, one at Wagga, one at Bathurst, one at Orange. There's a campus at Dubbo, have a campus at Port Macquarie. We also have an outpost, I guess you would call it. It's not a big campus in Canberra. We have partners in Sydney and Melbourne. So it's very much a dispersed institution. And that's the way, I guess, the way it was formed. It was formed back in 1989 when a lot of individual teaching colleges came together under the then Hawke government, under the Dawkins reforms. And out of that was formed Charles Sturt University. Charles Sturt, of course, a famous Australian explorer. So that was formed in 1989. And although you might be thinking as a distance education or online student, you're kind of separate from the main action. In fact, despite all these campuses, online is our main cohort of students. So we have around 24,000 students enrolled online in our courses versus around 10,000 students enrolled on campus. So very much an online university, a bit of both, but there's no sense in which online students are somehow play second fiddle to on campus. You're our main cohort of students, and hopefully you'll find that the online experience reflects that, in that it's very much student-centered and hopefully very satisfying for you. So would be always great to get your feedback as you move through the course. Now, you're also welcome as a CSU student, even though you're studying online, to visit our campuses. I mean, you're as welcome at the Bathurst campus or the Wagga campus as any CSU student. So you can visit the campus, visit the library, come and have a coffee. I certainly have students who come and have coffees with me occasionally. So it is great to see you guys. But one of the benefits is you don't actually need to set foot on a campus if you don't want to. We do like to see students at graduation time. But even then, we now have graduation ceremonies that are off campus. We have a very large one at Rosehill Racecourse in Sydney, for example. So although we like to see our students on campus, there's no necessity for you to come out to campus, to regional Australia, if you don't want to. I do like to see people at Rosehill, though. I should mention the races aren't on at the time of graduation, but it's always great to meet the students. Or I should say you guys. I shouldn't say the students, you guys. So tonight, you're here hopefully because you're enrolled in one of these courses on the screen. That's our list of all of the courses that we offer in the IT Masters portfolio. So they're all professionally oriented computing postgraduate courses. So if your course is not there, perhaps you better get in touch with us. If you're enrolled in a course that's not featured there, it could be that you're in the wrong place, or I've forgotten to list one of the courses. There are quite a few. There are masters listed there on screen, mostly the Master of Business Administration, Master of Cloud Computing and Virtualization. Just keep in mind that you can see on the right-hand side, including graduate certificate. So they form one package. So I do know that many of you will be enrolled, for example, in the graduate certificate of cyber security. So, and from there, if you choose, you can then transfer across to the Master of Cyber Security and take all your graduate certificate subjects as credit. So that's our full portfolio of courses. Occasionally, a student wants to move across from one course to another. So they start, for example, in Master of Cyber Security, and they think, well, that's not quite right on my career's changed tack. I want to move into the Master of Networking. That's certainly possible given there are a number of common subjects across courses, but that's something to certainly speak to us about before you make that move. But you know, that's the full portfolio of courses. So you're going to be enrolled in one of those. I'm guessing quite a few of you guys will be enrolled in the cybersecurity course because we've had a really excellent intake into that program, which is really pleasing. But you know, there'll be some of you enrolled in hopefully every one of those courses there on screen. So the course is an important factor. Another really important factor that you need to bear in mind, particularly at this early stage, is the CSU handbook. And that's kind of associated with each of the courses that you enroll in. So the handbook is kind of a legal document between you and CSU. It's an official document that outlines the structure of your course at the very start of your enrollment, at the start year of your enrollment. So the handbook that will govern you guys is the 2018 handbook, because that's when you started. So even if your course changes, you might, for example, have enrolled in the Master of Mobile Applications Development. And next year we may add a subject or take away a subject. Technically, you need to follow the 2018 handbook throughout the duration of your course. Now, that would be a bit mean, because if a really interesting subject comes on our books and it's not in the 2018 handbook and you guys want to do that, surely there should be a way for you to do that. And yes, there is, but you need to get in touch with IT Masters or your course director to get the tick of approval. That if it's not in the 2018 handbook, if you're going to vary from that, you need to just get an okay from us, get it in writing, so that when it comes graduation time, there's no argument about the exact structure that you've followed. So the handbook itself is available from the link above there. It's fairly straightforward, just the CSU address /handbook. And on the left-hand side, there will be a little option there called courses. That'll open up and you'll see further options for undergraduate and postgraduate. You just select postgraduate there because you're in postgraduate courses. And from there, you'll be able to choose your faculty. Do you know which faculty you're in? A bit of a test. Which faculty are you a part of with your enrolment? The faculty of... Faculty of...
Business and Justice, is it?
Yeah, pretty close. Faculty of Business, Justice and Behavioural Sciences. So it's a bit of a mouthful. Sometimes I forget it. I just call it BJBS, Faculty of BJBS, but that's correct. The Faculty of Business, Justice and Behavioural Sciences. So sometimes when you're kind of looking for information on the CSU site, sometimes you may have to choose the faculty name. So if you just remember yours starts with Faculty of Business, that's normally enough. Faculty of Business, Justice and Behavioural Sciences. And a faculty is just a way of an organisational structure, I guess, of organising schools and courses at the university. So that's one of our faculties. That's the one you're in. So if you get into the handbook and you choose postgraduate courses, you may be asked to then choose your faculty. It's the Faculty of Business, Justice and Behavioural Sciences. From there, a list of courses appear and you can choose, for example, the Master of Cyber Security. A page like this will pop up. And on this page, you have lots of little options, such as, for example, admission criteria, which you don't need to worry about so much now. You're in the course. The duration of the course, information there about graduation. But the most important button, I guess, at this stage of your enrolment is the course structure. And that's just there on the screen. Now, if we flip over and have a look at the course structure is kind of the it's the contract between you and the university in terms of the award that you're studying. So if you're in the graduate certificate in cybersecurity, for example, like you see on screen, within that course structure, you'll see the name of the course and you'll see a little description there of what you're expected to do. So the graduate certificate in cybersecurity consists of 4 restricted electives made up of any 2 elective academic subjects from Group A plus any 2 elective industry subjects from Group B. So that means you can choose any 2 from each of those different Group A and Group B. 4 subjects in total. But it is important to follow the rules there. And if you're going to deviate from the rules, you need permission, because ultimately, when you finish your course, the course director needs to sign off on your award and say, this is what you've done. You've met the requirements of the course for graduation. So you can see there the Master of Cybersecurity, similar thing, consists of 8 core subjects and 4 restricted electives. So core subjects, everyone must do. So if you're in the Master of Cybersecurity, there's no kind of choice there. Unless you get credit for any of those units, you have to do all of those 8 subjects and 4 electives. And electives mean you can choose any 4 from that restricted list. So it's important to follow that structure. If you do go into the handbook, you can click on these little red codes here, and that'll take you to a brief description of subjects. So where there is a choice, the handbook is easily searchable to find out a little bit more about those different units. But just bear in mind, it's important to follow the structure. Also bear in mind that with all of our IT Masters courses at the Masters level, there's a capstone subject. So this capstone is ITC 571, and a capstone means that it's meant to be done at the end of your degree. So there is often a sequence to subjects that's important. The capstone is a project subject that's meant to be done towards the end, so you don't go enrolling in that at the start. That's meant to be a capstone. There might also be dependencies between subjects, and typically that's expressed inside each subject as assumed knowledge. Now, the best way to work out which subjects to enrol in is to look at an enrolment pattern. And Chantel, I might just take control of the screen now, so I can just show students this. So I'm going to
Yep.
go
Do you have the button for it, or should
share
I?
screen. You cannot share screen while the other participant is sharing. Oh,
I will stop that then. There we go.
okay. Now I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully we're going to be okay. Desktop 1, share screen, and you guys hopefully can see my browser. Is that coming through okay?
Yep.
Excellent. Okay, so just to take you guys through this, don't want to labour the point, but it is nice to sometimes see something rather than just sort of talk about it. So there's your handbook. Click on courses. Oh, try that. Click on courses, postgraduate, Faculty of Business, all the courses in the Faculty of Business, some interesting ones there. Master of Anti-Money Laundering and Counter-Terrorist Financing. They're courses in different schools, so they're more finance courses. Then you scroll down and you'll find the ITM courses. They'll be spread throughout the document because it's just in alphabetical order. And we can just click on Master of Cyber Security. I'll just move that. So yeah, look, the course structure there, which I showed you, you click on that, you can click on the little red links and you'll be taken to a description of the units, which is good to read about those. But what I wanted to show you here, enrollment pattern, there's a little button there for your course that says enrollment pattern. You'll probably be shared these enrollment patterns as part of your enrollment. You will be given information, but there's normally a nice sequence to the way you should study subjects. Sometimes there's not. So for example, in the graduate certificate in cybersecurity, there's no prescribed pattern. You can do subjects that kind of suit your interest in the order that you need. You might have been given a default enrollment, but there's no actual sort of in stone pattern. But once you get to the Master of Cybersecurity, there is a recommended pattern of study there. So calendar session 1 intake, which is now calendar session 1 2018-30, there's a recommendation of 2 subjects there, 581 cybersecurity fundamentals and 578 dark web, and so on, moving down into session 2, and this is where it says, you know, choose an elective, session 3, and so on. So it is good to follow those enrollment patterns if you can, because they've been sort of thought about in such a way that you're moving from sort of maybe the less difficult to the more difficult subjects, but also taking into account the availability of subjects, because you don't want to be left at the end of your degree, the subject you need to do is not available, you need to wait another session, just delays things and makes people unhappy. So it is good to follow your pattern, but I know, you know, IT masters are great at communicating this stuff to our students, so there should be no ambiguity there about which subjects you should study. Okay, I'll continue to share my screen because I just want to show you a few other little goodies. When you're enrolled in an IT Masters course, you get access to the IT Masters course site, which has a terrible big font there. We've just applied a new skin. It looks like that font is just jumping out, but maybe it's because it's, you know, the new course, maybe it's a marketing technique, I don't know. But the IT Masters course site is something that you'll have access to no matter which course you're enrolled in. And that has a lot of useful information that is worth checking out. I'll go through a little quickly, perhaps you can check it out yourself. There are recorded induction presentations. Clicking on the left-hand menu item there, depending on your course, you can get a brief recording there tailored to your actual course, whichever you're enrolled in. Okay, so you can check out those. Information there about getting started, course contacts. Another important one here is announcements. These should come to your email, but they may not. You may have to check the announcements within the course site. It depends how your email is set up with respect to the site, but announcements are where we sometimes post available jobs and positions. So you can see there, we posted one last year now, IT security roles at Verizon. So we needed, or Verizon needed, some security analysts, and we have had a lot of people at Verizon go through our programs, and so they came to us and we post that within the announcement section on the course site. So available jobs, job opportunities, internships may be posted to that course site. There's a discussion board there. You can click on that, discussions, and there's a place to converse with other students about course-related matters. And there are also some really nice course diagrams, which you may have been emailed, but you can also access those here. And the course diagrams are for each course. Again, let's sort of stay to the same theme, Master of Cybersecurity. And these are another way of expressing the handbook in a more visual fashion. So you can see Master of Cybersecurity, you've got your core subjects up the top, but the added benefit here for these diagrams is they have the sessions in which those subjects are available. So ITC 571 is available in session 1, 2, and 3. Down to your electives, you can see there the red numbers, which indicates the sessions in which those subjects are available. And those course diagrams are available from that course site. Go back to the course site. So have a bit of a look around that site. You should be members. There's nothing you can do wrong. It's just a matter of investigating. Lots of useful information. I mentioned before Interact 2. So when you enroll in a subject at CSU, you'll be given access to an Interact 2 site. Interact 2 is the successor to Interact 1. So ITI 581, Security Fundamentals, is a subject that I'm guessing quite a few of you might be enrolled in 2018-30. So that's the site for that subject. And you can see there a picture of your lecturer, Jeremy Costa, bit of an introduction, information there about when his online tutorials are, when you can connect, a little bit about Jeremy, textbooks, etc. You guys shouldn't have to worry about textbooks because they should be supplied to you. And on the left-hand side, again, you get lots of useful information that's necessary for you to successfully navigate the subject. So there's a subject outline where you'll see information about the subject, including your assessments and the dates they're due, contact information, discussion boards for students just enrolled in the subject. And you can see here that within some of the sites, the assignments are actually taken out of the subject outline and placed separately within the left-hand menu. So assignment 1, you can click on there and you can find out what you need to do, when it's due, marking criteria, and so on. There's also this little button here, or this option for EASTS, which is the Electronic Assignment Submission Tracking System. So when you need to submit your assignment online, you can click on EASTS, and there'll be options there for you to upload the assessment for this particular unit. So the Interact 2 sites are, that's where a lot of the action happens for your particular unit. So you'll get very familiar with those. Once again, do encourage you to go on there and check those out. The last thing I want to talk about tonight before I pass over to Chantel, who'll give you some great study hints, is the student portal. So where will I find it up the top here? I think this is the one. Yeah, this is just my portal. So yours is going to look different, but it's student.csu.edu.au and what we call the student portal. And it's kind of your one-stop shop where you're exposed to lots of different options and facilities. And you can find out what the university has to offer in terms of services, but where you can also do things such as change your contact details, change your enrolment, pay any subject fees, request or get access to the library or request books. So most of the options here are just from a drop-down menu up the top. A few I want to draw your attention to. One here is your message center, and you can see a little envelope up the top right-hand corner here, and I've been a bit amiss. I've got 54 unread messages. That's not particularly good, but the message center is where the university will send you any official communications. So we don't send those by emails because email can change. So we want to make sure that that when we send something official, whether it's a bill, whether it's notification. You can see here that results have been released, whether it's the fact that, you know, a campus has been closed down due to a bushfire, which has happened before. Any official information will be sent through to the message center. It is important for you to regularly check the message center. You can see here the messages are divvied up into critical, important and general. So do keep an eye on that. Ideally once a week if you can, just keep an eye on things there to make sure that any important messages don't go unread. Other options, there's a study option here where you can get access to Interact 2. There's information about exams, residential school, which doesn't really affect you guys because there are no residential requirements for your courses. An option here for the library, including journal databases that we subscribe to. So as part of CSU, you have access to a large number of journals, some of which are quite expensive if you were to subscribe to them individually, but also information there about ebooks that the university has, referencing, a reference collection, learning about referencing, so referencing guides. So the library option there is one to check out. Information there about finances, making payments, due dates, even scholarships and grants. Services and support, so information about counselling, career development, Indigenous services, disability services. So if you do have some kind of disability that you think will interfere with your study, you should register with the disability service. And certainly we've had students who've been hearing impaired or vision impaired, and they register with the disability service, and they might get, you know, an extra 10 minutes to complete an exam. It depends on the circumstance. I mean, we would look at that. But if you have got a disability, important to register with CSU about that. Administration is an important one. You can update your personal details. You can get access to your transcript online. You can vary your enrolment. So by clicking on your enrolment there, there'll be information there about how to add or delete subjects, information there about the handbook, information there about graduation planning system to see what you need to do, what's left in your course. Often this information, as I said, is communicated very clearly to you by IT Masters, so there may not be a need to go on to some of these options, but they are there if you do want to take advantage of that. If I click on home again, you'll see that when it eventually loads, that I've got a number of subjects coming on my screen up the top and some course sites. So there'll be links there that you can click on to get access to your Interact 2 sites, depending on what you're enrolled in, and your course sites as well. So it's something that, you know, you're better off going on there and playing with yourself and just working out what is available. But yeah, it's pretty much all there, right through to forms and policies. You name it, we've got it. So do check that one out and see what's available to you. Okay, so look, I think that's all I have to say tonight. That's my bit done. I'm going to pass control back to Chantel. Thanks so much for listening to me. I'll hang around to the end of the presentation. Look forward to meeting with you during your course. Hope you have an enjoyable time. And once again, welcome to CSU. So Chantel, I'm going to stop sharing and...
Great. Yep. I will share my screen. Here we go. So I'm going to speak just generally about studying. I know a lot of you have studied before, but some people, and we do get a fair number of IT Masters students who haven't studied at a university level ever. And there are some little tricks and trips that happen where, you know, ways of speaking or ways of referencing that you do need to think about. So I'm Chantal, I work with IT Masters. I help to run our subjects and organise our mentors, who you may have noticed we call our subject lecturers mentors, and they're here to help you, you know, study and learn. But then we also have a whole admin team who help deal with things like when you submit your assignment and when you call with a question. So one of the things, Jason was just talking about these services and support, and it's really important to have a look through these because there's a lot of really helpful elements here that you could really look at. Particularly the study section has a lot of how to study sort of hints that can be incredibly useful. So this student section here has a few things that I think you really should pay attention to. There's the Allen team, which is academic literacy, learning and numeracy. They provide free support services 7 days a week, online and on campus for all CSU students. You can book an Allen advisor for 45 minutes appointments to discuss a range of learning issues. They're not about specific assignments and they won't have specific technical knowledge that you might need in your subjects. That's what your subject mentors are there for. But what they will have is the ability to talk about university things and even to have a discussion about university speak that might be helpful. StudyLink has a choice of up to 20 short subjects you can study to boost university studies, like academic skills that you might need, essay writing, or a chance to fill in any knowledge gaps, or experiencing in study online or in a weekend workshop. Whoops, sorry, back. And then there are some study guides or tips, and those are just really useful tips that cover a lot of things that aren't always common knowledge to students. It has things like weekly planners so that you can plan out your study, and then more long-term planning to help sort out when assessments are due and that sort of thing. It's a big one when studying at universities that you have to plan not just for this week but for next week as well, and for 4 weeks from now when perhaps something might be going on at work but you still have assignments due. So it's really, I think, useful to look at those. So you may have noticed we've got 3 sessions a year, February, July and November. They recommend for when you're studying a subject, it's 10 to 12 hours of study per week per subject. And obviously that depends on where your knowledge is at before you start doing a subject. It depends on your ability to take in information, and it depends on the weekly workload. So for instance, your first week you might have a lot of reading to do, but weeks 2 and 3 might not seem all that intense. But then when assignments start becoming due, you might need to do even more than those 12 hours per subject. It's important that you don't drop your study for a few weeks at a time. Work can get busy and your life can get busy, but we've found that students have their best results if they study a little bit each week and they try and continue to build on information. It means they don't forget what they've learned 2 weeks ago. If you try and cram your entire week's worth of work into one time period without planning for breaks, you won't learn effectively and you'll really grow to hate your subject. We found it's helpful to pick a time of the day that you study every day. It could be 8 p.m. after work, or it could be an hour before work if you're a morning person. If you can create a habit for when you study, then you will end up studying more effectively. And it's best to work out when you study best. I'm not a morning person. I can't get up and do some study. But if I study just after I get home, once I've had a chance to relax for a little bit, I will be more effective than studying of a morning or late at night. Study space doesn't always seem like the most important part. It can sound a bit hokey to think you should set up a study space, but studies have found that the place or context in which you study affects how you'll remember the information. Don't study in your bedroom if you can help it. It will impact not only how well you study and how well you retain information, but how well you sleep. If possible, you should find a place that's comfortable, but not so comfortable that you get too relaxed. Don't make it so warm you start drifting off, and so cold that you start shivering. You shouldn't have too many distractions in your study space. It should be happy and inviting, but not so much that you stop studying. Make sure it's well lit enough that you can comfortably take notes, and then any backlit machines don't hurt your eyes. If you have all of your study material in your study space, it will encourage you to keep studying instead of getting up every few minutes to find something you need. Remember that water is an important study material. You should also consider virtual spaces when you set up your study space. Where are you saving your work? How are you backing it up? You can never have too many backups when it comes to assignments, but also consider different programs for notes themselves. I've used OneNote in the past, especially where there's an interconnected subject that you might use a journal article in several assignments. But it's just important to have some form of digital plan for how you're going to study and keep your notes and back things up. You don't want to create the excuse where you can say, oh, well, I can't study now because my notes are at home, or I can't access them from this machine. There's so many different cloud services that will allow you to keep your notes. There's really no excuse. I want to talk a little bit about some of the assessment types. It's important to work out what your assessment type is before you start doing it. So there's research essays, which will be one of the most common things you encounter. You answer a question and you present an argument based on facts. The subject participation is sometimes worth marks, and that's forum posts or interacting with other students. Business reports, they often involve investigating and analysing information or an issue and recommending actions and making proposals, which provide information that someone needs to help them make decisions. Case studies, where you're given a situation to examine and you identify positives and negatives and make recommendations. Labs, often in IT-related subjects, you're giving a lab environment to work in or try out the software or situations related to what you're learning. Presentations, sometimes they can be audio only and sometimes video. We have a subject, MGI 521, which is professional communications, and the last assessment is to create a video of yourself presenting information. People are really terrified of that subject, but it is the subject that we most often get somebody saying, this was incredibly useful, it was terrifying, but I got so much out of it at the end of it, and I learned so much that can help improve my presentations. Quizzes sometimes happen. They're used to gauge where students are at during a session. They're often used before the census date, and the census date is the last date you have to withdraw from a subject without financial penalty. And they just make sure that everyone's on board and studying and that they're absorbing information as necessary. And then you've got exams, which are often very dreaded, and that's the end of session summation of knowledge. At IT Masters, we're introducing e-exams slowly, which is exciting. It means you can do your exam at home. And sometime before your exam this session, I've been doing an exam session just for new students to tell them, you know, some little bits about how to sit an exam and any questions they answer any questions they might have. Because if you haven't studied at a university level and if you haven't been in school for 20 years, exams can be incredibly foreign. One of the guides that they have on those CSU student pages with the skills and the writing tips is that writing your first assignment. It's really useful because it covers not only the types of assignment, but how to break down an assignment question and work out exactly what you should create for your assessment. There's nothing wrong, there's nothing worse than working incredibly hard on an assignment and then realizing you're answering a question that's not what they're asking, which always happens. New students, they panic or they read into a question what they think, and then what they end up answering is not what the question was actually asking. So yeah, like I said, that first thing that you should do when you approach an assignment is to work out the actual question. Read it really carefully and make sure you understand what's being asked of you. And this guide sort of breaks down into what words are being used to make sure that you're asking the right question. And your mentors or your lecturers are always there to answer these questions. If you're unsure, make sure you ask them rather than assuming. All assignments are worth different amounts. It's really important to take that into consideration. An assignment that's worth 15% should take a considerable amount less time than an assignment that's worth 50%. So it's really important to consider that. Word counts may not seem important, but they're there for a reason. You can lose marks for going more than 10% above or below, and it's often a good guide to how detailed you should be. Table of contents and reference list at the end of your assessment generally don't count towards your word count, but your headings throughout do. So that in the middle of the essay, headings will count. and the in-text references will count. To be fair to other students, we try and take word count really seriously. It's not fair to a student who stuck to, say, 2,000 words to get that if I don't take it seriously for a student who wrote 2,500 words, it means that they had more time to make their statements. Marking criteria is also incredibly important. It breaks things into chunks. Every assignment we have students who ignore an element of the marking criteria or don't pay it enough attention because it is included towards the end of the criteria or because they don't really know how to answer it. If a marking criteria is worth 20%, that's 2 letter grades for an assignment. So really take into consideration all of the marking criteria that's included. Then you've got the marking rubric. That's that big table that has credit, distinction, high distinction. It's how your assessment is graded. It should be a really key resource when you break down your assignment. It should tell you exactly what you're expected to produce in order to get a HD. I've seen amazing assignments that show an incredibly deep level of thinking, but they almost all fail because they'll almost all fail if they don't answer the question or if they ignore what the rubric is asking them to do. I wanted to talk a little bit about academic writing. It's not that different from business writing, but it's important to consider how you're going to structure things. So that basic structure of a topic sentence, supporting sentences, and closing sentence is something you really should keep in mind. The idea is kind of that if you took out all the middle sentences and just had the first sentence and the last sentence of every paragraph, you would have a basic understanding of what an essay was saying. You won't get the nuts and bolts, but you'll get the basic structure. Remember not to include I statements in an essay. Don't say, I feel this. Make your statement and back it up with evidence. But this is really important to consider. And if you're finding you've got paragraphs that are 7 or 8 sentences long, maybe they're too long. Maybe it's important to consider breaking them into separate paragraphs. It does make it easier to give someone marks if they've broken their essay into easier to read chunks and paragraphs. You're not going to miss a sentence in the middle of it when you're reading through it. Definitely check out this guide if you haven't written an essay in a while, or if you haven't been at uni for a while. Well, there's also a referencing guide that's really important. And I'll talk about that a little bit here. Whenever you include anything in an essay that's not referenced, you're basically saying that you came up with that, or that's your idea. So reference things, read through this guide, reference everything that you got from somewhere else. You will have to reference at some stage during your degree. APA 6 is the style that's generally expected at CSU, but you can double check that in your subject outline. Keep references as you study. If you're reading an essay, if you're reading an article, if you're reading a textbook, and you find a reference that you think is really important or interesting, include that in a separate Word document. I have a Word document every time I study a subject. I have a Word document that's called the subject title or subject number that just has, random quotes with all the referencing information for it. Because there's nothing worse than writing your essay, and I'll be honest, a lot of the time it is close to the due date, and remembering there's a quote that backs up what you're trying to say, but not being able to find it. So if you find anything interesting at all, or even if you just think a journal article is interesting without a reference, include a little paragraph about what it's about and all the referencing information so that you can search through that one document and find the references you're looking for. The don't reference Wikipedia here is a sticking point for a lot of people because Wikipedia is often more accurate than an encyclopedia or a textbook. Problem with it is you can change Wikipedia. You can't reference Wikipedia because if you have the power to change something, you can make it say whatever you want. Your main idea here is I often use Wikipedia so I can understand a topic better. Maybe even there's some academic referencing at the end of a Wikipedia page, but I'll never reference the Wikipedia page. That one's really important to remember because it always trips people up. No matter how accurate you think it is, don't reference Wikipedia. So we have a IT Masters contact page here, and that just has all of your, if you want an extension for an IT Masters subject, and those are any subjects that start with ITI, ITE, or MGI. There are a lot of admin people that you should contact. There's all those CSU people, so you can go to itmasters.edu.au/information from new students/who to contact, and you'll be able to find who to contact. When in doubt, try admin@itmasters.edu.au, because we can at the very least push you onto who you should be speaking to. And remember, with extension requests, we understand that you're all busy working people. You all have things to do. If you need to get an extension for something, get the request in as early as possible, because the earlier we read an extension request, the more seriously we take it. Again, use Alan if you've got any questions. They've got study support, assignment review, workshops, and more. And then last but not least, we've set up a space for you guys to chat. It's just a Google Hangouts space, and it's specifically for students who've started in 2018-30. The idea being, maybe you'll have a question that everyone else can help answer. Feel free to join it. I will send the link into this group chat here, and join in if you want. Don't worry if you don't want to. But we thought it might be nice for you guys to have a space to talk with each other. Alrighty then, I think that's it from me. Jason, I'm not sure if you're still here. Maybe if you have anything to say.
No, look, thanks, Chantal. I think that was really informative and great. Look, the only thing I can think to say is that, study is, and Chantal certainly hinted at this, study is a very active process. The idea that you can read a book or even watch a webinar and that information is going to kind of just immediately transfer it to you is not really correct. So you need to really critically read, get involved, do the activities, put a lot of time into your assessments, and that's how you learn and get the most value out of your studies. So it's a really active, involved process if you're going to get the best value for money and to do justice by your studies. So that's all I have to say. Good luck, everyone. Hopefully it's an enjoyable experience.
That critically read is a big one too. I get a lot of people thinking that means to be mean about a journal article or to think negatively about it. It just means to think deeper than to just accepting whatever is said in every article. But yeah, I think that's about it for us tonight. It's 10 to 8, so I'm sure you guys all have somewhere else to be. If you have any questions, don't hesitate. You can put them in that Google Hangouts and I'll answer them, or you could send an email to admin. I'm sure you'll have a contact at IT Masters that you've previously had some contact with. So feel free to shoot us any questions. Like I said, either we'll know the answer or we can point you in the right direction. Does anyone have any questions for our presentation tonight?
All good, thank you.
All right then. I will see you guys on that Hangout, and maybe I'll speak to you guys on the phone or see you at graduation.